Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Today I'm sharing the cards I made using Scrapping for Less November 2020 Flavor of the Month card kit. The theme is Simply Sentimental. If you want a closer look at everything that's included, I do have an unboxing video and I will have a link to that in the description box below. And if you haven't heard the news, Scrapping for Less will be closing at the end of the year. The November kit is their final monthly kit. With every card kit, Scrapping for Less provides 4 different card sketches for inspiration, and I'll be following all 4 of these sketches for my cards. And one of the sketches, what's really fun, is designed by Scrapping for Less. So let's go ahead and jump into my first card. I'm using the collection number 1. This is called Puppy Paws. I have this fun pattern paper with little bones and hearts and paw prints for the background. I layer that on some dark blue cardstock. Now the kit does include colored cardstock, but I will also be bringing in some from my craft room since I tend to add quite a few layers to my cards. Now I didn't keep it on the screen, but the sketch I'm following is the Paper Play Sketches. This is number 5. Has this fun element on the left hand side with a little triangle cut out. Already stamped out the sentiment. This is just stay positive. Just use some blue ink for that. Stamped it on some white cardstock. I'm going to hold off attaching this rust colored piece for just a moment. Put my card front onto a card base, leaving just that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I decided to add a little more pattern paper, so I cut out this about 1/4 of an inch strip. And I'm just going to glue it to the very left-hand side of this rust piece. And it might be hard to tell on the video, but that rust pattern paper actually has a linen design on it. It's very subtle. Now since this piece is going over that sentiment layer, I'm going to add some scrap cardstock just to keep everything at the same level. A little trickier with a shape that's not a rectangle, but I'm still able to fill in those gaps. Put this final piece, and then I'll hold it up to the sentiment piece, and then I realized that one was way too much. So I just ripped part of that off. Put some ATG on the back, and then adhere it to my card. And then for a finishing touch, I'm going to add a couple small stitched circle die cuts. Use that same dark blue cardstock. And there is my finished card, and this is card number 1. For card number 2, I'm going to use the Scrapping for Less sketch, and it's really fun. They already have measurements on the sketch. I'm using the same collection. This is that Puppy Paws collection. The Scrapping for Less kits have 4 different collections, so it's really nice if a full 6x6 paper pad is too much for you. Maybe you get bored of those same designs. This one is nice because there's 4 different paper collections in a smaller amount, since you'll get 6 sheets of each collection. So I use that chevron paper for the background. And then for this strip on the left, I have the dark blue with some bones. I've already gone ahead and stamped the image. There's only 1 image stamp in this whole kit since it's mostly sentiments. It's a sweet little puppy, so you could definitely color this little pup up. I don't color images anymore, so I just stamped it on one of the pattern papers using some brown ink. I have it on this oval, and I did add some scrap cardstock on the right hand side just to keep everything nice and even. Stamped out the sentiment, happiness is a warm puppy. Did that on some white cardstock with blue ink. Cut a fishtail. You can see I'm following this sketch fairly closely. And I'll adhere that to the left hand side. I'm going to bring out those scrap pieces of cardstock again just to get that piece nice and level. I like to hold it up to the card to see where I'm going to add an extra piece. Now I haven't always done this, but I find if I don't, you're going to see that noticeable dip or dent on the paper, and I don't like the look. So I'll adhere that to the card, and for some finishing touches, I'm going to use the twine that's included in the kit. I'll tie a bow, trim off the extras, and then I'm going to adhere it next to that puppy on the oval. I'm going to do it on the left hand side. Kind of moving it around to see if I liked it somewhere else, but went right back to the left where I first placed it. And I'll just adhere that using a small glue dot. Also going to use some of the enamel dots that are included in this collection. Put 3 of them in the upper right hand corner and 2 of the small ones next to the sentiment. I try to place the enamel dots very lightly in case I don't like where I'm putting them. And then when I'm sure of the placement, I'll give them a nice firm press. Let's just try to decide where I'll put that final dot and went into that upper right hand corner. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 2. And that puppy is absolutely adorable. For card number 3, I'm moving on to their collection number 2, which is called Thanks So Much. I'm going to use that same Scrapping for Less sketch. I have some floral paper for the background, and then this peach colored polka dot paper for that strip that'll go on the left. I'm adding some of the white organza ribbon across the middle of the card. Just going to put some Scor-Tape on the back to hold those ends in place. I'm going to put some ATG on the back and then layer this panel onto some green cardstock. There's a little bit of this green color in that pattern paper, so I thought it worked really well for some contrast. Before I adhere the polka dot paper, I am going to add those scrap pieces of cardstock where it goes over the ribbon. I'll put some ATG on the back. And I'm going to put this card panel onto a card base first, since I have that polka dot paper 4 1/4 inches. Let's try to decide if there was an up or down on this pattern paper, and there really isn't. So now I can adhere the polka dot paper. Now instead of having the oval as indicated in the sketch, I decided to cut out 2 hearts. I have 2 different sizes, and I'm going to overlap them. I've already stamped out the sentiment. This is thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I thought it was perfect to add some extra hearts with that sentiment. I'm going to layer the sentiment on that same green cardstock. I cut fishtails on both of the ends. And since all of these pieces are going off of different layers, now I need to level them all out. So pulling out some of that scrap cardstock, I'm just trying to get them fairly even level on the card. Just going to add some to the right hand side of the large heart. Use some liquid adhesive to adhere it. And then for the smaller heart, I just need a small piece of cardstock on the right hand side of that. I know adding all these extra pieces of cardstock may seem fairly time consuming, but since I donate the majority of my cards, I always want to provide the best quality. So I use good cardstock for my card bases, strong adhesive, so I make sure nothing is going to fall off. And adding just those little pieces underneath and leveling everything just steps up the card a little bit more. Now for the sentiment, I'm going to pop this up using some thin foam squares. And then finishing touch, I'm using the sequins that are included in the banana split level. They're a clear, so they match with all of the collections. I'm going to put 3 of them in the upper right hand corner. And I'm going to adhere those using some mini glue dots. There are several different sizes of sequins, and there's also 2 different types. They have the typical sequins with the hole in the middle, and they also have some that are the flat style that don't have that hole. After looking at the card, I decided I really don't like the gray heart next to the sentiment. I should have stamped it in a different ink color, but I didn't. So instead I'm adding some Nuvo Dream Drops, just trying to cover that up and add a little bit of shimmer. So there is card number 3. Now moving on to card number 4, the card sketches from MFT. This is number 216. I selected a sheet of pattern paper that has these large flowers, and the design almost goes with the pattern on that sketch. I used a scalloped border die to cut out that shape. It's not exactly the same shape as on the sketch, but it's fairly close. And then I use this green pattern paper for the bottom. Overall, this card is going to be very quick and simple. I've stamped out the sentiment, thank you, have it on a stitched oval die cut. I'm going to pop this up using some thin foam squares. And then I decided I'm going to add some of the white ribbon that's included with the banana split level. It's this white skinny ribbon. To adhere it, I'm going to put some 1/8 of an inch Scor-Tape along the top of the card. I'm trying to get it nice and straight. Doesn't always happen when you're recording because you can't really get your head over it to make sure it's straight, but I think I got it fairly close. Remove the backing on the Scor-Tape, and I'm going to put 2 rows of the ribbon. I'm adhering the ribbon to half of the Scor-Tape, and then I'm going to put that second row right next to it. I'll wrap the ends behind the back, and then put another piece of Scor-Tape on there just to make sure those ends aren't going to come off later. Remove the backing on that, and then I'll put this card front onto a card base. Using lots of ATG, I always want to make sure my cards are going to stay together. And I didn't show it, but I used that same white skinny ribbon and tied a bow. And I'm going to adhere it to the upper right hand corner using a small glue dot. And final touch, I'm going to add a few of the pink enamel dots that come with this collection. Just putting them around the sentiment. And there is my finished card, and I really like how this one turned out. The colors and the designs are so pretty. Now moving on to card number 5. The card sketch is by Alyssa on felt magnet. The paper collection is collection number 3. This is Family Ties. Has some really fun and vibrant papers. So I'm layering both of these pieces with some of the dark gray cardstock that's included in the kit. I love this floral paper, it's so pretty. Put my card front onto a card base, and then I can start working on the sentiment. For that strip on the left hand side, I'm using some more of that gray cardstock. And the sketch is actually designed to be a square card, but I switched it up and I'm making an A2 size card instead. Before adhering that strip, I did add some thin foam squares to the upper and lower area, just keeping everything nice and level. And for the sentiment, I've already stamped this out. This is "Friends are the family we choose." So I'm going to double mat this sentiment, putting it on the gray and then on this matching green cardstock. I did use another pattern paper and just cut this thin strip to put underneath the sentiment, just for a little extra detail. And then I'll add some scrap cardstock to the right hand side. And then adhere this to the card. I don't want to cover up a lot of those flowers, but they do end up getting covered up just a bit. And then finishing touch, I'm going to add 2 of the flowers that are included in the collection. I'll adhere those using some large glue dots. And then I'm also going to use some of the sequins, those clear sequins that are included in the banana split level. I'm going to put 3 of them in the upper right hand corner. So I'm trying to decide where I want them. I end up shifting them to the right and putting them in the center of the little circle design on that pattern paper. And I'll just adhere those using some small glue dots. I used 2 different sizes on the sequins just for a little extra detail. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 5. I love the colors. That teal and gray looks so nice together. For card number 6, I'm using that same MFT sketch. And I've already used the die and cut out that fun scallop border, using some pink polka dot paper for the bottom, and then this really bold pink pattern paper for the top. So lots of fun bright pink. Put my card front onto a card base. And I've already gone ahead and stamped out the sentiment. This is family, a little bit of crazy, a little bit of loud, and a whole lot of love. I'm using some silver mirror cardstock for that matted layer, and that's just cardstock that I have on hand. I decided I'm going to pop up this circle die cut using some foam dimension, remove the backing, and then I'll adhere it to the left hand side, basically following the sketch. I just have a larger circle. Then using that same pink cardstock, I cut 2 different banners, different lengths, different widths. I'm going to glue them to the upper right hand corner. I'll overlap the smaller one to the right. Wasn't sure if I was going to put it left or right. And then using the white enamel dots that come with this collection, I'm going to add 2 of them onto those banners. I felt the sentiment needed just a little something extra, so I'm going to add a couple of small hearts. I use that same pink cardstock. I'm going to overlap the 2 in the upper left hand area, and then I'll add 1 to the right hand side. Just adhere those using some liquid adhesive. Then I'm also going to add a little bit of sparkle to those hearts. So I'm using a glitter brush from scrapbook.com. This is the clear shimmer. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 6. Now moving on to card number 7. I'm going to switch paper collections. We're into collection number 4, which is called Wildflowers, and it's my favorite from the whole kit. I'm going to use that Paper Play Sketches. It's a fun sketch. I'd never used it before. I cut that angle on the green pattern paper. I'm just going to layer this on some green cardstock. I was ready to adhere this piece, and I remembered, oh, I need to add my sentiment, so we'll hold off on that for just a moment. Put the background paper on that green cardstock, and this time I'm adding that 1/4 of an inch layer. Since the main background piece is mostly white, I like to have a little thicker border. So I've stamped out the sentiment on the peach colored cardstock that's included in the kit. This is "You Belong Among the Wildflowers," and then it has 2 wildflowers next to it. I'm going to add all those cardstock layers to make sure everything is nice and level. Adhere the sentiment down first, because then that green leaf paper will go right on top. I don't know if there's a die available for this fun shape, but it's really easy to just cut your own. I just cut an angle and then matched it up from the other side. Kind of like cutting a fishtail, just making it large and a little wonky. I'm going to use a couple of the ephemera butterflies that are included in the collection. Put a foam square on the right hand side of this first butterfly. I'm also adding a small scrap of cardstock. Still trying to keep everything nice and even. And then I'll adhere that one next to the sentiment. And I was going to adhere the peach butterfly above the teal butterfly, but I changed my mind and decided to put it next to the sentiment on the right hand side. And I did put some foam squares on the back just to pop it up. Then finishing touch, I'm using these pretty enamel dots that come with the collection. They match really nicely with that peach tannish color in the pattern paper. So I'll put 3 of them in the upper right hand corner. And I also wanted to add a little bit of sparkle to the butterflies. I pulled out the Nuvo glitter drops in the white blizzard color, adding just a drop inside of the circles on the butterflies and also filling in the flowers next to the sentiment. There is my finished card, and this is card number 7. Now moving on to card number 8. I'm going to use the Scrapping for Less sketch for this card. I have some tone-on-tone paper for the background that has a bunch of words on it. I'm using this lovely floral paper for that strip on the left-hand side. I'll put this panel onto some teal cardstock. And this is cardstock that I had in my room. I think it matched fairly nicely and it added that little bit of contrast. I'll adhere that floral strip to the left-hand side. Just use some ATG for that. Try to make sure to get it nice and straight. For the image on this card, I'm using the large floral ephemera piece that's included. I have a white oval die cut, adding that scrap piece of cardstock to the right-hand side of it. Cut it a little too large, had to trim down some of it. And here, the oval die cut down first. And I thought about popping up the ephemera piece, but I'm just going to use some liquid adhesive and glue it down instead. For the sentiment, I'm also going to use one of the ephemera pieces, but I'm going to put it on top of this pattern paper, this peach tone-on-tone pattern paper. So I cut a fishtail on the right-hand side. Add that scrap piece of cardstock to the left-hand side. I'll use some liquid adhesive to adhere that in place. I realize I need one more piece of paper. I use some of the pattern paper since it's thinner than the cardstock. And then for the sentiment, I'm using "Thank you so much." Put some liquid adhesive on the back and then adhere it to this banner on the lower side. Finishing touch, I'm going to add some of the enamel dots. Put 2 of them in the upper right-hand corner. Put a couple in the lower left-hand corner by the sentiment and then just one by the flowers. And I also decided to add some of the shimmer using the scrapbook.com glitter brush. Put it in the center of the 3 flowers, and then I'm also brushing it onto all of the leaves, just for that little extra sparkle. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 8. At this point, I've already used all 4 of the collections, but there's also the banana split level that has some extra pieces, like this embossing folder. So I decided I'm going to make just a couple more cards. I'm using a card sketch from MFT. This is number 515. The pattern paper is from collection 4. It's the wildflower, although it looks very different from card number 8 that I just made. The background paper is a very light, it's white and it has some brown print on it. Kind of looks like a linen. And I used the heart embossing folder to add that extra detail. I have this striped paper for the large circle, layered all of these pieces with the craft cardstock that comes in the kit. I used 1 strip of the tone-on-tone pattern paper. It had all the words or sentiments on the back. I used that pattern paper for the banner that goes behind the circle. Layer my panel onto the craft cardstock, put my card front onto a card base. And then for that smaller banner, I used some more of the pattern paper and I cut it out using that large banner die that's included in the banana split level. Just glue that directly onto the circle. And then for the sentiment, I stamped out "Missing You." I think that was with the family ties, the collection 3. I cut the left-hand side at an angle just for a little extra interest. And then using the pink cardstock that's included in the kit, I cut out 2 heart die cuts. And these are from, I believe, a Lawn Fawn set. I've had it for years. Add some of those cardstock layers just to get everything nice and level. Put the larger heart down first, and then I can adhere the smaller heart. I did decide to put some foam squares on the right-hand side. And then just put some small piece of cardstock on the left-hand side. Felt like everything was fairly level then. And then I'll adhere it underneath that larger heart, trying to make sure not to cover up the sentiment. In finishing touches, I'm going to add some of the white enamel dots in the upper left-hand corner. I wanted to do 3 of that medium size, but there's not that many left. So instead I decided to use the 1 medium and 2 small. And then I'm also going to use the pink enamel dots and put 1 on each of the hearts. And there is my finished card. And I did make 2, I just didn't show the process of assembling the second card. I used the same sketch and the same pattern paper for that second card. Just use some of the ephemera pieces for the image and the sentiment. Now here's a quick recap of the 10 cards I made using Scrapping for Less November 2020 Flavor of the Month card kit. I will have a link provided in the description box if you are interested in this kit. Once it sells out, that's it, it's gone. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, Scrapping for Less is closing at the end of the year. So the November kit is their final monthly card kit. They are the first company that had me guest design using a monthly kit, so I'd love for all of us to show our support to them. Let's get that kit sold out right away. Thank you so much, Teresa at Scrapping for Less, for having faith in me all those years ago when you asked me to guest design. I hope this new chapter in your life brings you joy and lots of time with your beautiful family. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.